Hi everyone, my name is Lilith. My mom acts like a baby. She's sick. It's hard for me to talk about it. I'm sorry. Anyway, my mom wasn't always like this. She used to be a successful businesswoman, but then everything fell apart in an instant. My aunt came over one day and told me the terrible news that my father was cheating on my mother. He had been living in another country at the time, where he'd gone to open a business. She showed me a picture. The expectation was that my mom would divorce him, or try to find him so she could kill him, but no, she just started going crazy. First, she confused the toilet with a street, then the TV with a microwave, and then one day she just sat in my room, scattered my toys, and started playing with them. 7 days straight. She was only distracted by the smell of food, and sometimes she wouldn't even go to the bathroom. We were assigned a nanny by the child welfare authorities. My aunt became our nanny because she worked there. I understood that despite our wealth, we would now have to save money, and my aunt was doing an excellent job as a nurse, and besides, she didn't make money from it. At that time, I was doing paperwork, running around to lawyers, but a lot of people were trying to fool me. The thing is that my mother did not have time to process the inheritance. She prepared it but did not sign it, and my mom flatly refused to do it in her current state. We were sitting at the lawyer that day. I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, my mom was gone. I happened to see through the window that she was walking on the street among the cars. I ran out into the street and barely had time to grab my mom's hand so she wouldn't get hit by a car. But one car hit me lightly. I dropped my documents. A cab driver got out of the car, helped me gather everything up, and then asked me how I was feeling. I cried from shock. It had been so long since anyone had asked me how I felt. My mother yelled that she was going to the toy store. I covered my face with my hands, but the cab driver took me by the hand and put me in his car, and offered her a candy. My mother gladly got into the car to eat it. On the way, he and I introduced ourselves. He said his name was Dylan. Then he took us home. He shoved his business card into my hands. "Call me for anything. I'll help you any way I can," he said. I handed him some money, but he wouldn't take it. "I had a father like your mother. I understand what it's like," he said, and left. That was nice of him. My aunt was a good help to us too, of course, but she had a family too, a disabled child, and I felt bad calling her in the middle of the night when my mother was having seizures or choking. The other day, I was running around town looking for medication because my mom was sick. She had a fever. It turned out my mom had broken the lock at the time and ran out of the house. I found her at an ice cream machine. She was banging on it and threatening to break it. Passers-by were already looking at us and whispering. "Nothing to see here, move along," I heard a familiar voice. It was Dylan. He helped me get her inside.
"What a handsome uncle you are,"
my mother said in a baby voice. "Wow, she listens to you," I said, not without surprise. Dylan fed her, gave her medicine, and put her to bed. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you." "It's nothing. I told you to call me if you need anything." "I'm embarrassed because you're working." "Yes, I was in your neighborhood, and as you can see, right on time." "I can make it up to you." "Come on, don't. Why don't you hire a nurse? I'm sorry, but it's not like you're poor." "Yeah, as it turns out, not everything can be bought with money. I've hired over 50 caregivers. None of them lasted 7 days." "Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, I have to get to work." Dylan left, and then when my mom woke up, she started looking for him. She didn't want to listen to me in any way, did the opposite, spit up her meds, threw away her food, and refused to bathe. I cried into my pillow because I couldn't take it anymore. I went into the room in the evening to try to feed her again, but my mother was standing at the open window and threatened that if I didn't get her uncle, by that she meant Dylan, she would jump. "No, Mom!" I shouted. I managed to drag her toward me, but Mom hit a vase on the table as she fell, and we fell onto the shards. Mom started screaming, and one shard went right into her arm, and the other into my leg. I don't know why, but the shock made me call Dylan instead of the ambulance. He arrived very quickly, took my mother into his arms without a word, and took us to the hospital. There, the doctors decided to let her be treated. She also had pneumonia. I came out of there exhausted. "You've got a wound in your leg too. Go into the hospital." "No, I'll get my stuff home and come back here again. It's okay, it's not that deep." "Your mom's asleep anyway, there's time. Come with me then." Dylan brought me to some house. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I have a first aid kit. And I'm also an excellent bandage technician, he said. I decided to trust him. I was weak and I was starving. Dylan treated the wound professionally and cooked a quick dinner. For the first time in so long, I felt calm. The last few years have been like a race. We cut ties with all our relatives. They found out that my mother had not yet signed the will on the property and decided to trick her into signing everything over to them. My father won't even ask how things are going. Only my aunt doesn't ask for anything in return. You're a wonderful daughter. Not everyone in your position could stand it. My dad had schizophrenia and laryngeal cancer. He even screamed at the very last moment that he didn't know who I was. I'll never forgive myself. For what? It's not your fault. Sometimes I think I could have done more. That's why I'm going to help you. He said this, and his eyes turned red with tears. I felt so bad. I hugged him, and then I kissed him. After Dylan brought me home, I packed my things and, at the last minute, grabbed my mom's will and the deed to our house. On the way out, we ran into my uncle, who was a kite. He was waiting for my mother to die so he could take everything away from me. I hid the file behind my back, and Dylan took it from me, hiding it under the back of his jacket. I rudely told my uncle that everything was okay and asked him not to come again, but my aunt was waiting for us outside the car. Auntie, I'm so happy to see you. Hi, baby. I heard your mom is in the hospital. Why didn't you call me? George, I'm calling the police. Get out. My uncle laughed. Who's that? Your boyfriend? He's good looking. Thank you. And what are you doing here? Honey, I found a couple of lawyers, just in case. You're not 18 yet, so you need a guardian. I can be one. We have to go to them right now. But I'm turning 18 in a month. I was beginning to suspect something was wrong. Dylan took my hand and slowly walked us away. This is just a formality, then we'll sign the inheritance back over to you. You do trust me, right? Yes, but let's decide on another time. It's already night. Just give me the documents and I'll help you. I'll do it myself. Run! We ran towards the road. Dylan caught a cab and we managed to get away. My aunt ran after the car, but we broke away from her. I was all in tears. I couldn't believe that she had been on their side all the time. Dylan kept me calm. A little later, we got to the hospital. I asked Dylan to hide the documents while I was in the hospital, and he agreed. The next day, he didn't return my calls. I started to worry. Maybe something had happened. I remembered that he had left his car at my house and went there. I walked closer and saw him with my aunt in the car. He was handing her a file of my papers, and she was handing him money. I ran straight from there to the hospital. How could I have trusted him? My uncle must have been promised a share too, to show up there that day. Suddenly, Dylan burst into the room. He grabbed my hand and said quietly, "We have to run." I ripped my hand out and slapped him in the face, calling him a hypocrite. I know everything. I saw you and my aunt. You and she are in it together. It's going to take too long to explain. We don't have time. I slipped her a fake ID. She's on our way here. What? But why? Because I fell in love with you. It didn't go according to plan, okay? I can't trick you. I have a plan. Then my father came into the room. My aunt ran into the hospital with my uncle and the lawyer. I went out into the corridor. My aunt started threatening to take everything away from me as it was. All I want is her fingerprint. Where is she? She yelled. Dylan came out. My aunt slapped him, and he said we'd already done everything. How? My father came out of the room. I've made it out to myself. My aunt went pale. It turned out that she had lied about him cheating. She told him in general that we were dead and faked photos from a car accident and the funeral, told him not to come home anymore, and all the while she was feeding my mother pills to lose her mind. She made it work. Almost. Except Dylan stole the phone out of her purse when he suspected something was wrong, found my dad, and he flew right over. Now my aunt and uncle are behind bars, and I have hope for my mother's cure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joko. You'll think I'm just a normal teenager. I'm short with shoulder-length hair, but it looks weird when I'm going to work instead of school. Yes, you heard right. I work as a marketing manager for an advertising company, and for a long time. Do you want to know how it happened? I'll tell you all about it. You will be surprised to learn that I am, by the way, a valuable employee at work. I have many friends, acquaintances, and good colleagues. I am independent and provide for myself. You may ask, where are my parents? I left them for another city when I was 18 years old. Yes, you hear me right. Now you have a question in your head about how old I really am. I'm 30 now. Are you shocked? I'll tell you more. Not only are you in shock, but all the people around me. In general, actually it's kind of a family thing. On my mother's side, my grandmother doesn't look her age. Yes, even my mother. She is now 50 years old and looks 30. And she also has a tiny figure. She has gorgeous black hair, white teeth, all her own. She can't afford to wear fashionable, youthful things and looks just gorgeous. She and my dad are the same age, but he looks like her father. Some passers-by are even slightly perplexed when they kiss each other on the lips at parting. My mom says it's all about genetics. My dad is American and my mom is Japanese, and her wonderful genes were passed on to me. I grew up, by the way, like all ordinary babies. First I learned to sit, then stand, walk, and so on. And then, when I was 12 years old, my appearance seemed to freeze in place. So eventually, I turned 15, then 18, and I still looked like a teenager. My mother immediately noticed that I took after her. She warned me that in life, I will have some difficulties, so I should be prepared for this and carry my ID everywhere. I kissed my parents goodbye and left home when I went to college. It was located in a neighboring city, so I had to learn independence from that moment. So the difficulty started as soon as I arrived at the bus stop. The saleswoman asked me how old I was because she didn't want to sell me a ticket. I showed my ID as proof, but she looked at it for probably 15 minutes. My bus had already left during this time, and she still did not believe that the document was authentic. I was in a bad mood, but I was allowed to leave. I arrived at my dorm, and the same problems were waiting for me there. On the first couple of days at school, among the students, the teachers noticed me and asked where my mother was or whose sister I was. As soon as I told them my name, they believed I was covering for my older brother or sister. Sometimes it got to the point where they called my parents via video link with a director to prove my age and name. Absurd! I was starting to get really mad at the way I looked. 6 months later, my patience broke at the end when I went to the store to buy a laptop through a card. These 6 months, I saved money by honest work, making essays and practical tasks to order. I did a good job of creative work. I drew and wrote well. With this money, I decided to buy a better computer. But the seller thought that I stole the card from my mother and wouldn't take it. Because of the scandal and nerves, I was taken to the police station and my mother had to go to another city to get me out of prison. I despaired and did not know what to do. Then my mother opened her purse and showed me her makeup when we came to my dorm room. I didn't understand what it was for because I never wore makeup. But my mother said that's how she saved herself once, and she gave me a light makeup to make me look a little older. Then she took me shopping and we completely changed my wardrobe. We bought more classic things. All my sneakers had been replaced with shoes, torn jeans and trousers, and I changed my t-shirts for blouses. And now I was wearing elegant handbags. I now had to do styling and makeup every day. But you know what? It really helped me. At least I looked a couple of years older, not like a child. Of course, I was very tired of putting on a marathon every day, but I liked that I was perceived differently now. When I graduated from college and started looking for a job, my resume was also surprising because people couldn't believe that a 16 to 17-year-old girl had already graduated from college. I was called for an interview to personally look at me, and I explained to everyone what cool genes I have. In general, I was hired after all. And no, not because of my appearance, but because of my knowledge and skills. Sometimes I still hear colleagues chattering about my height, and on New Year's Day, they gave me a pacifier or a bottle of milk. But nevertheless, I know that this is kind. You know, looking young is great, and I can't wait to look like my mom. I think it's only at that point that it's a real compliment. A couple of months later, one of my colleagues came up to me at work and told me that she had a girlfriend. She is a photographer and is looking for models to advertise teen clothing. I already took the hint and flatly refused such an offer, but she persuaded me with fees. Yes, they paid very well, and I thought for a couple of minutes and agreed. After all, extra money never hurts. When I got to the studio, the staff were talking to me because I wasn't wearing makeup. The photographer herself knew the whole truth. She saw how awkward I was and immediately took the situation into her own hands. She asked her colleagues not to do this. I was given clothes, I tried them on, and they were just right for me. I looked just like a schoolgirl. After taking a few series of pictures, I was paid and went home. Within a week, the pictures were hanging on huge banners in the city. I was so angry. If I had known that the pictures would be hanging around the city, I would never have agreed, I shouted. My colleagues took selfies against the background of the advertisement and sent them to me. I felt like a real child. I got hysterical again and called my mother. Mom came to me with my favorite buns, which she baked. I ate them and cried. Mom, why do we have such a curse? I asked her, but she said that this is not a curse, but a gift. I didn't agree with her, but my mother explained that a person can buy everything except youth. Not many people have this kind of gift. I'm proud that we are special, my mother said, and I suddenly realized that this was true. We don't have to have facial plastic surgery, facelifts, and Botox just to remove wrinkles. I liked this idea, and from that moment, I accepted myself as I am. Well, life has become easier. As for the others, I've learned to hold out my middle finger held high. If you liked my story, please like it, write comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.